Don't you just hate it that when you put up a question box or a poll or a question in a caption of a post, like no one replies? I know it's an awful feeling. Like you've put all of this time into your content, you're like, yes, now this is the time I'm gonna hit them. They're gonna reply to my question box. And no one replies. I know it's annoying, but I promise you we can fix it. And in today's episode, I'm going to walk you through 5 steps that are going to get people to actually reply to your question boxes and stories. And in turn, that's going to get you more sales. So you literally can't lose. You can only win when you listen to this episode.
Hello, and welcome to the Fast Forward Amy show, the show where we lift your life and business with simple strategies. I'm Fast Forward Amy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode every Tuesday. One of the most frustrating things on Instagram specifically might be that you are putting so much effort into your content and you're creating stories and posts and you're doing all of that stuff and you don't get any replies. I know how this feels actually, because when I don't really work for it, I also don't get any replies. Even having over 60,000 followers, I still have to make sure that I, try my best. So there are a few tips I can give you that are going to help you get more replies to stories or, for example, question boxes. Because I often get this question when we're talking about social media, like, hey, Amy, I'm trying really hard, creating content, but no one is responding to my question boxes, or to my my posts when I ask them to comment something. Why is this and how can I improve it? I have about 5 steps I'm going to walk you through and 5 checks you can do for yourself to fix this. Because before we go and fix it, I want you to realize that over 50% of our sales are closed through social media. So a lot of our sales come through our emails. And by the way, people end up on our email list through social media or the podcast. But about 50% of the sales come through our DMs, come through contacting people in question boxes, come through contacting people or following up with people who attended a live with me. So if you are leaving conversations on Instagram on the table and you're not, using them for your sales, you're missing out on potentially doubling your sales. But if you're not getting people to reply in the first place, there's nothing to leave on the table, so you can't double your sales. So basically, I want to help you double your sales by getting people to respond to your question boxes, to your stories, to your posts, because it's so easy to actually get a sale once you're in a conversation with someone. And I get about 50% of my sales and through that. And at the moment of recording, we are already at 980,000 euros VAT excluded booked for this year. So do the calculation. That means over 400,000 euros this year has already been booked through, in our case, the DMs, the question boxes, the lives, the comments. That's a lot of money. And these are things that you can do easily yourself, so you don't need a team for this. I know that that's a really big objection when people listen to my content. They're like, oh, but Amy, you have a team and I can blah. Know that I still do a lot of my my stories. I do them myself. Most of my posts, I do them myself, or I follow up or don't follow up with them myself. A lot of my DMs I do myself, most of them except for like when there are extraordinarily busy days. So if you want to grow your business, you need to know that sales are the fuel of your business. You need to get sales in order to invest in your growth. For example, to grow your email list where you can get percentages of your sales. So I think we can all agree that getting people to open the conversation with you is a big one. The first step or the first check I want to check off with you is, are you creating content from your ego or from your lead or client? I like to look at social media content as creating content for my best friend or for my favorite clients. I've realized a few years ago when I was in a position that Instagram wasn't showing my posts to new people anymore, so I couldn't reach new potential followers. I could only reach current followers. I realized back then that that was actually a really great opportunity to just focus on what my existing audience wanted to hear. And I just started focusing on them. And right now I focus on what do my current clients want to see. And that might be some personal stuff from time to time because they love the joking side I have. And, the fact that I burned my food last night while I was creating an Instagram story and I got so into the story that I burnt my food on the stove, but they also like getting behind the scenes views of my business, and they like just a really practical, easy wins tips. So when I look at what I want to talk about, that's kind of like having a conversation with a friend where the friend is just like nodding, but they're not into what you're saying because you're not talking about something that they think is interesting. I have this with my brothers, right? So my brothers aren't that interested in my business. I love them. They're not that into my business. They are always trying to get me to party more because two of my brothers are DJs and then one is a photographer. So they're very creative. And they're like, Amy, let's go party. And I'm like, no, let's build a dashboard. So I shouldn't be talking about dashboards to them all the time because they would stop visiting me maybe. I'm exaggerating. My oldest brother, Timothy, would actually love to see me build a dashboard in Excel because he's an Excel nerd just like I am. But I'm bypassing that fact. If I would talk to my brothers about money and Excel dashboards the entire time, after a while, they'd be like, hey, little sis, we're not visiting you anymore. This is the same with your clients and with your audience or with even new potential followers. When you're only talking about stuff you want to talk about, at a certain point, they're just gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna mute you or I'm gonna unfollow you because I'm really not interested in this. Basically, humans are only interested in themselves. People wake up thinking about themselves and they go to sleep thinking about themselves. Unless you're heartbroken, then you're probably waking up thinking about your heartbreak, again about yourself, and then at night you're doing that too. Long story short, it's very human to act from our ego, to want to talk from our ego, but you have to realize that in your business, your ego has no place or no room. You have to look at what does the ego of your client want. So are you creating content from what you want to talk about, or are you talking about things that are actually interesting potential clients? That's the first question. Whenever you're creating stories, whenever you're creating posts, is it actually valuable for someone else? Is it entertaining for someone else? Really put on like your imaginary consumer hat and think, what does my ideal client get out of this? Does it actually matter to them? That's the first question. If you don't fix that, then we can't fix anything. Second question I'm going to ask you is if you're stuck, you're posting question boxes and asking questions and no one is replying, or maybe like just one person is replying. You're like, why is no one replying? Newsflash, with my over 60,000 followers, I still sometimes get no replies, and I get no replies when I fuck it up, when I am just talking about stuff I want. I'm like, hey, I have podcast recordings tomorrow. Please ask me a question. Yeah, when there's no build-up, there's no value, or I'm like, I haven't warmed them up, or I'm not giving tons of advice beforehand, or just like the entire time, or my podcast is super not valuable, then no one will actually ask me questions. When I first give a lot, all the time, 80% of the time, give. Here's advice, here are tips, here's entertainment, love me, love my brand, all that stuff. Then when I ask a tiny question, I will get replies. The question for you is, are you giving more than you are asking? If you are only posting when you're launching, if you're only posting when it's very clear you're looking for a sale or for a lead, no one is going to reply. Even when you're not asking for a sale, but you're just asking a question, it's kind of like selling. And people don't want to, even when something is free. So for example, this will also apply to people who are like, no one is opting into my lead magnet and it's free. What am I doing wrong? Well, have you given people a reason to? Have you given people a reason to reply to your question box? Did you give advice beforehand, for example? So there's this like reciprocity. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Like, do they want to give back to you? Or is there something they can genuinely learn from you, which is why they're like responding to the question? Really have a look at like, why would someone else take their time to do this? And it's the same with lead magnets. Even if you're not asking people to pay for something, you're always asking people to pay you with their time. So you want to see, is it worth it for people that they're going to pay me with their time? Because time is very precious. We only have a limited amount of it. So are you giving more than you're asking? Definitely pay attention to this. If you're only selling, pitching. I have this so often where I'm like, in a launch, I'm known for like pitching a lot and being very unashamed about pitching. I'm actually consciously switching my brand, or like pivoting more to having more launch free periods and more periods of like value, so that by the time I do launch, or that I do ask for, hey, can you please give me a review on Apple Podcasts, that people are actually already warmed up. They're like, sure, Amy, you've given me so much. Let me write you a little review on Apple Podcasts. Hint, 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 hint. If I've given enough value already, maybe you want to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. But I know that even after a 30-minute episode, me asking for a review, it's gonna require me to really like get people to want to do it. That's the thing. You can only get people to do something if they actually want to do it. Even when it's a free thing and just asking a question. Make sure that you're not only creating content when you are selling, and make sure that you're always giving 80% more value than you are asking other people, right? Third question, or the third thing you want to do is, it might be that you're currently testing this out. You're like, oh, Amy said I need to open a conversation. I need to have engagement, blah, blah, blah. I can get sales through the DMs. Okay. But then you're asking really difficult questions. I see this sometimes. People are like offering a service, and they'll post this, for example, they'll make this whole post on their feed and like have a really deep question, like, for example, I'm gonna go into a ridiculous area here, but it might be like, what's the deepest, darkest thing you've ever done and haven't told anyone about? And that will be the call to action on their post. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock, you're not getting any replies because you're asking really private stuff in a really public place, and no one would even tell you this in private, or they haven't even told their best friend. Like, this would be like, what's something you haven't even told your best friend about? And then they'll ask to publicly comment that under a post. Would you comment under that post? Probably not. The way you can start teaching your audience to respond to your questions so that at a certain point they will trust you with very sensitive information is by starting with asking yes or no questions. This is also what you do with kids, you know, like, you want this or that, you want this or not. On a different note, it really triggers me when parents ask their kids the entire time what they want. Sometimes I'm like, just stuff it in their face. Unpopular opinion. The mom police is gonna come at me. I'm not a certified tiny human raiser, so don't come at me. But you want to make it easy. So let's take my brothers as an example. Let's say my 3 brothers come to visit me during the weekend. So 2 live in Amsterdam, 1 lives in London, normally Sydney, but whatever. My brothers are really nice, but they're also very strong-headed. Imagine they come to my place and I'm like, so what would you guys like to eat tonight? You have all the options. It can be hot, it can be cold, we can go out to eat, we can get food delivered. There's a menu here, but there's a menu here. And, I live in the suburbs, but, whatever you want, like, just ask me anything. I can make it happen. Do you think they'll agree easily on what they want to eat? No. 3 very large humans who will start bickering about what they want to eat. This is basically what people's brains are as well. If you have too many options, no option will be chosen. Whereas if I go to my brothers, I'm like, hey, do you want fries or pizza? Then they can do a 2 against 1 vote and we will decide very easily. You want to do this with your stories or with polls, for example, too. I think question boxes are a little bit of a next step if you want to really ask open-ended questions. I would start by teaching people to respond to yes or no questions and be like, do you also like coffee? Yes, no. Coffee, it can literally be the coffee example. It doesn't even have to be something related to your brand or what you're going to ask. You just want to teach people to interact with you, to make this a safe connection, to make you a human they get to interact with. And usually this actually works best for personal stuff. So a while back I was choosing rings and I was like, should I buy the blue ring or the pink ring? I ended up buying both of them, but I had never gotten as many replies to my story poll as I did at that time when I asked about which ring should I buy or how should I cut my hair. Don't dilute your content with only stuff like that, because then we're back at the beginning where it's just about you, and it's not the you show, it's your client show, your content. But it does help when you just give people really easy options, blue or pink, fries or pizza. Think of my brothers. I will have to post more about this. I think my brothers are a very great example. And then after a while, you can start asking more open-ended questions. So maybe you can look at your audience as like growing from like baby to actual real life human. Like you want to build that relationship with them, and you want to make it easy, and then teach them to give more elaborate responses when they start talking, something like that. Please don't judge me about the stuff I said about feeding children. So ask yes or no questions or left or right questions versus asking open-ended questions, and only start doing that when you've gone deep enough, and you know that people will start responding to it. The fourth thing you want to ask yourself is, with the example I just gave, like, hey, share your deepest, darkest secrets with me in the comments below where everyone can see them. That doesn't work. Maybe include an element of privacy. So for example, whenever I will post a question box, I'm like, ask me anything. Or I'll be like, ask me anything. P.S. It's anonymous. Or I'll get way more replies when it's anonymous. So I'll be like, your anonymity, is that what it's called? Yeah, is guaranteed. I won't share that you shared these answers. I'll get way more questions when I just include the P.S. you can stay anonymous. So include an element of privacy. Maybe be like, hey, just send me in the, your post on your feed, say like, send me a DM if you're struggling with, your metabolism, or I don't know, I'm just thinking about something that's private, your sex drive. Let's do that. You're like a sex expert coach and you're talking about, people who have a hard time getting aroused. I don't know. You think people are going to answer that in public on Instagram? No, but they might start trusting you enough to actually send you a DM about it because they kind of assume no one else is going to read this. So you can be like, hey, if you've ever struggled getting aroused, although the stars lined up and the planets were just right, you still didn't get aroused, send me a DM because I'm an expert in this, and no worries, everything you tell me will stay between us. People will start opening up and send you a DM. So add an element of privacy. You can do this by reiterating the fact that responses will be anonymous, or by asking people to contact you privately. This is something you can do on your website too, right? So I think on your website, for example, a contact form feels very impersonal, but a phone number and actually having someone on the phone where you can hear the actual voice of the person is very personal. So we are currently talking about maybe adding like a WhatsApp number on our website, so clients can just contact us through a contact form or a chat box, but they can actually just like call someone on our team, especially in sales periods, because trust is needed for a sale, and the real life contact will help people trust us, and then we will get more sales, and then we will have more happy clients we can serve, which is the goal of our company, to have happy clients. That's a really important one, by the way. We don't just want clients, we want happy clients, which means we want to help our clients stay with us, which is actually something. Did you know that according to the 80-20 principle, 20% of your clients can give you 80% of your revenue? Now, what a lot of businesses do wrong is they're constantly focused on getting new leads, getting new potential customers, and they're missing out on actually getting their current clients to stay. If you're currently struggling with that, or you're not using this in your business, I would love to help you out, because I'm hosting a webinar soon, and I know that a lot of people have like clients and then they never come back or they get questions in their email inbox and people are asking for a quote and they send the quote back, and then the clients ghost them and they never respond. Maybe you've had this, like abandoned carts in your shop. Maybe you were in a conversation in the DMs, like what we were just talking about, but then someone doesn't reply anymore. If you want to fix that, I'd love to help you, because there are 5 sales mistakes you're probably making that are causing your clients to ghost you, or your potential clients to ghost you. And we can fix them so that you actually have returning clients instead of the one-off clients, and you can increase your revenue massively. This is my 5 sales mistakes webinar. You can sign up through fastforwardamy.com/5 sales mistakes. It's available both in English as well as in Dutch. So I'm really serving everyone, except if you speak another language and you don't speak English or Dutch. And you can just sign up. I've linked the link in the description of this episode, but you can also just go to fastforwardamy.com/5 sales mistakes. Okay, and then we are on, I don't know where I was. I just thought of that webinar. It might be useful to you. But the last tip I wanted to give you is, and this is, they're all really big reasons, but this is a really big one of these 5 big ones, is that probably your call to action is unclear. You really want to tell people like, hey, do you have problems getting aroused in the bedroom? send me a DM now. Here is the link, or something like this, or click here, or reply here. The call to action needs to be very clear. Click yes or no. Often people just use wordings that are very unclear, or too many words, or making their audience confused about what to do. And this is especially important, maybe not in replies to stories or question boxes, but for example, in terms of sales, I'll just add to a link. I'll be like, adding my program link. For example, you might be interested in my business coaching program. We're opening up a new round soon. You want to be on the wait list because the pre-order gets a nice discount and early access. And the link is fastforwardamy.com/elevator. I can be like that, or I can be like, hey, register on the wait list, click here. Register on the wait list, click the link in the description. Actually, by the way, truly click the link in the description because you don't want to miss out on this program. But the difference between the link is versus click on this link, if I do that in an email, the conversion is wildly different. It's like a 20-80 thing. Maybe 20% of people will click versus like 4 times as many people will click if I actually say click here on this link or click on this link. In your stories, it's the same. When you have a poll, when you have, for example, a question box, maybe you're asking your question really weirdly. Or maybe you're saying, for example, what I'll do is like, ask me anything. I can put that in a box. And then I will write example questions besides the question box. And the example questions will help people to ask me the question. So this is not really about making a very clear call to action, as it is helping people to ask you the right questions, helping people to respond to you in the correct way. Because maybe it's just the call to action is unclear for people because they just don't know what you expect from them. It's like when you're going to a costume party. Again, let's take my brothers as an example. I'll be like, hey guys, when you come over to my place, please don't dress shittily. They'll be like, well, Amy, what do you mean? Can I wear these blue pants, or do I need to wear the red pants? I don't know. I don't know what clothes they own. But versus if I'd be like, hey guys, hosting a party while you guys are staying at my place, please dress like this. And I give them a mood board. This is a very unrealistic example, by the way. This has never happened before. But we did have a party for my mom's 60th birthday in my house. And my parents gave very clear instructions like, we want you to dress like this. So they knew, okay, if I show up like that, I win. So maybe people want to ask you questions, but they're just kind of like, I don't know how to approach you. Maybe you seem unapproachable. So if you give them an example, they will ask you the right question. So my 5th tip here is make your call to action clear so that people can actually be clear with you. So either use a very clear call to action, click yes or no on the poll, indicate your favorite, choose blue or pink instead of just being like blue, pink. People don't know they need to press the box. So you can do it literally with your call to action, or you can just be like, okay, so this is a call to action. How can I help people actually take action on the call to action? And everything that we're talking about here always comes down to what we talked about as a first thing in this podcast. It's, are you thinking from yourself or from your client? So for example, when I make stories, when I make a post, I go through it and then I look at it as a client. And sometimes what will happen is I'll look at my stories and be like, whoa, I spent an hour on this and it's total shit. I was just full on ego tripping. And it's good because you need quite a bit of ego to be a successful entrepreneur, in my opinion. But on the other hand, it's not good if I would run my entire business like that. And there's really like a bit of a balance between, how much authority have you already built up? I can afford to show a bit more ego in my content than I could have afforded in the beginning of building my business, but with emails as well. So I have someone on my team who is my copywriter. She's amazing. She's learned so much over the past months, and she is at a point where I barely have anything to say about, for example, emails that we send out in launches. Full disclosure, she's in the room with me as I'm recording this. So, I can't not give her praise. No, I'm just joking. She's amazing. And we went from really focusing on, how do we say things in the FastForwardAmy tone of voice, in English, in Dutch? Do we use a comma here? Do we use these words or those words or emojis? And we've kind of that's all figured out now. And we've stepped away from this. And now we'll look at like an email and be like, okay, so would I feel spoken to if I am this type of client? Whenever she writes an email and I get the email and I'm reviewing the email, for example, I need to feel who she's talking to as she's written the email. And we've had talks about this. Sometimes it's like very clear. I'm like, oh, this is clearly for this type of avatar for this program. Or sometimes I'm like, I don't know who you're talking to. And this will sometimes be the only feedback I'll give her. Like, I don't really feel it. This is very much, this is not specific. She might actually hate me about this. I don't really know. But I'll be like, can you make this more like targeted towards the one person and then shoot it over back? Usually I have nothing to add anymore. Usually she'll actually be in agreement like, yes, you are right. I wrote this in a more broader sense and less towards one specific person, which is basically where I'm going to end this episode. My absolute biggest pet peeve on social media is when people are like, hey guys, or like, you all. You in English is the same one person versus many people, but in Dutch it's jij versus jullie. So many people treat their audience, and I make this mistake as well, by the way, so I'm definitely not perfect, far from it. And they're like, jullie, you all. But on the other end of the screen is only one person. So when you are creating content, when you are making question box, and you're like, hey, how do you guys all feel about this? No, how do you, specifically one person on the other end of the phone, on the couch, sitting there eating ice cream, how do you feel about this topic? Do you agree with me or not? Constantly ask yourself, if you are your own ideal client avatar, ideal customer avatar, would you feel spoken to? Do you feel personally like invited to respond to this? If you have different personas of your avatars, does your avatar feel spoken to? Wow, I'm just like, the words are just not working for me anymore. You are always creating content for one other person. If you can make it click with one other person, you can make it click with all of the other people. It's like in a room. If you're standing in front of a room, you've probably heard it before, that you have to connect with, like, you have to divide your room into 4 parts and just like gaze over the parts. This is bullshit. You don't have to divide your room into 4 parts and just like slow gaze over it. No, you have to find one person and look into their eyes and connect with them for over 5 seconds. And if you've connected with that one person, you've connected with the entire room. You want to connect with people. Put the social back in social media. Think about who you're talking to. Get off your fucking high horse. You're not on a stage. There is no really big audience. There is an audience, but the way you're going to build a bigger audience, the way you're going to actually open the conversations with people is by actually engaging with one person at a time. You're never too good to reply to DMs. You're never too good to reply to customers. You're never too good to actually ask follow-up questions. Like, put the social back in social media. Open the conversations. This is where the gold is. Imagine you would be in a store. You would also ask people, so if you, for example, I used to work in a shoe store when I was younger. When people walk in, you're like, so what are your deepest, darkest feelings? No, they're like, hey, I'm looking for a shoe. Great. Would you like an open shoe or a closed shoe? Do you like brown or blue? Like, you would ask those questions, right? Don't make it weird online. Just pretend like you're actually meeting people in real life. I've said a lot of stuff. I don't know if this was a good episode or not. Let me just check with my team. Yes, they're giving me thumbs up. If you liked this episode and if you learned anything from it, I hope you did. I constantly want to challenge you to think of like, how is this also appropriate for me? How can I apply this to my business? There are so many things you can change in your sales process. You know, so many people think, I need 1,000 followers. I need 10,000 followers. If you have a couple of followers, what you need is not necessarily more followers. You need more paying clients. That's what you need. So I want to warmly invite you to my webinar on 5 sales mistakes you are making that are causing clients to ghost you. The webinar is available in Dutch and English. I already said this, I think. I can't remember because my notes are shit. And the link for the webinar, which is like a mini coaching with me, is fastforwardamy.com/5 sales mistakes. If you are currently getting views but no sales, you're getting people to watch your stories, but they're not actually buying from you. You know, you see abandoned carts, you get emails and you email back, but then they never email you back. Then this webinar is for you. I can help you get more return out of the effort you're already putting in and finally lock in those sales. Come and join me in my webinar, fastforwardamy.com podcast.com/5 sales mistakes, or simply click the link in the description. And as always, you can find the recap of this episode through FastForwardAmy.com/number of this episode, which is like, for example, if this was episode 100, you'd be like FastForwardAmy.com/100. 100. It's getting difficult for me. I need to go and eat. I hope this episode helped you out. So many people are leaving me reviews on Apple Podcasts. That's a lie. No one is leaving me reviews. Don't you think that's sad for me that I'm putting so much effort into this podcast? I know you're like, oh, Amy, I'll do it later, but I'm in the car now. No, when you park your car and you arrive at your destination, take your phone out of the holder. Don't touch it right now because you're driving. Grab your phone, go to Apple Podcasts and leave me a nice review. Yeah, I would really appreciate that. Let me know if you liked this past month of sales episodes. If you haven't figured it out yet, by the way, in the last 3 episodes, I've been talking about sales in this episode as well. I hope I helped you get more sales. If I helped you get more sales or a new lead or whatever, please let me know on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you, and tag the podcast, tag me on Instagram at FastForwardAmy. I'd love to see how this is helping you out, and I hope to see you in my webinar. I am back next week, Tuesday, with a new podcast episode of the Fast Forward Amy Show. I'm Amy van der Putten from Fast Forward Amy, and see you next week.